The S&P 500 is finishing 2025 on a high note, but there are other emerging markets that had an even better year. Here to take a look at some of the emerging markets to look for in 2026 is MarketBeat analyst Thomas Hughes. Thomas, so great to have you here in person.
It is. It's good to see you in person. We've never done this before.
I know.
So
We're
good,
normally
right?
on the computer, so this is great in person. And I'm really excited about this topic today.
Right.
We had a macro economist on a few weeks ago who was talking about the importance of diversifying into these emerging markets. Talk about, again, S&P 500 had a really good year.
Well, right.
But these other markets did too.
So emerging markets tend to be riskier because they are emerging and they have less established economies, but they tend to grow faster. They grew faster than global GDP in 2025, and they're expected to grow faster in 2026.
And when we say emerging markets, we just mean other countries, right? What does that mean?
Just like less developed countries, not the US, not the EU, not Japan, like Latin America, India, Southeast Asia, Africa are all really big emerging markets expected to lead with growth in the coming year.
Before we get into the list of stocks you have for us today, I just want to talk a little bit more about why we're seeing so much growth in these emerging markets and growth in their middle class and growth in these countries and their economies. It seems kind of contrarian to the America First policies happening in the US right now and the push with tariffs and everything to try to beef up US trade.
Right.
But to see other countries growing at the same time is interesting.
It is contrarian. A lot of these US first policies are really targeting China and accelerating the move of supply chains out of China, which is good for all the countries around that area throughout Southeast Asia, even in Mexico. Leche in Mexico is as ubiquitous as made in China these days because it's becoming a manufacturing powerhouse. But along with that, the devaluation of the US dollar is making it easier for these companies to buy US products within their own economies. As their economies develop and the middle class grows, they have more and more disposable income to buy things, which is just creating more commerce. They're becoming more exposed to digitization, which gives them more exposure to e-commerce and to e-commerce drivers. E-commerce is going to be an underpinning factor in emerging market growth in the coming year, as well as for global growth. E-commerce is going to take share versus regular commerce, and that's going to drive gains throughout the ecosystem, emerging markets and in developed markets.
So you have a list of 3 different emerging markets to look at and 3 of the stocks in those markets that are really strong to look at. So we're going to dive right in. What's that first emerging market you're looking at?
Well, the first stock is dLocal, and they're headquartered in Uruguay, but what they are is a fintech. They're doing pay-in and payment solutions, cross-border solutions for e-commerce throughout Latin America, but also in Africa and Southeast Asia. So it's really good exposure to all the emerging markets that are going to be strong in the coming year. And right now the growth is accelerating. Analysts really like the stock, and the outlook for the coming years is pretty solid.
And it's a fintech company, which is a lot of demand right now. Let's talk about just overall demand globally for the industry that this dLo is in.
All right, so fintech is growing really, really strongly because of increasing digitization globally, but this is being underpinned by the middle class. And the middle class is the fastest growing segment of the global economy, and within emerging markets, it's also the fastest growing segment. So emerging markets really have this growth premium tied to the middle class and digitization, which is where dLocal comes in. So not only are they helping consumers with easing the payment process, but also doing the same thing for businesses, improving business-to-business transactions as well. So it's really just a comprehensive play on financial services in emerging markets.
And I think one thing important to clarify when we're talking about these stocks, it's not just about how fintech does in Uruguay, right?
Right.
They're a global company, is that
Totally
right?
right, because like Uruguay is not a country necessarily that's going to invest just in this one country, but dLocal is a cross-border, multi-region operator providing services throughout emerging markets, throughout Latin America, throughout Africa, throughout Southeast Asia, providing these services, for a wide range of businesses and consumers.
Let's look at the chart really quick, talking about how well this stock has done so far this year.
So far this past year, dLo has been doing very, very well. The stock is up about 50, 60%, and it looks like it's going to continue moving higher. Analyst trends are very robust, and they're definitely leading this market to new highs.
All right, a really interesting first emerging market to look at, and close to that AI field a little bit.
Certainly, as a fintech, as a digital company, AI is going to help their internal operations. It's also going to help them with attracting and keeping customers and providing services to their customers. So again, it's another tailwind for this business.
Now, before we get into the next stock, if you are interested in AI stocks that are expected to do well in 2026, make sure to check out Thomas's list of the top 10 AI stocks to watch in 2026. You can scan the QR code or click the link in the description to get that full list of Thomas's top 10 AI stocks for the new year. All right, Thomas, back to emerging markets. Let's get to that second name on your list.
The next one is Grab. Grab is, they call themselves a super app. They're based in Singapore, Southeast Asia. But what they do is like ride sharing and ride hailing, but also some fintech services for B2B businesses and for these e-commerce solutions. They're also emerging as a potential leader in autonomous driving. So they're working for autonomous vehicles and AI and expecting to start launching some services this year, which is really going to help boost their growth.
This is a name you have talked about on the channel before. I can't remember if it made one of your monthly watch lists or why we talked about Grab before, but you've been bullish on this stock for a while.
Right. This is a stock that's been on my radar for a couple years. This is a story that's been kind of developing and gaining momentum, and it seems like this year it's reaching this critical mass where all of these good news vectors are combining. It's being reflected in the analyst and the institutional sentiment trends, which is providing support for the market. And like you said, I can't remember if it was a monthly pick or not either, but it has come up a couple of times over the last couple of months just because of these trends that are developing. Results were very strong. Analyst upgrades are leading the market. Certainly is a good stock to be on the watch list, if not one that you want to buy.
Now, Grab is very similar to like Uber or Lyft, but it has a little bit more than that. Is that right?
Well, it is because it's a super app. It's not just for ride hailing and ride sharing. They've also got their fintech services and some other digital services that they provide throughout their footprint.
I want to dig a little bit deeper into the global competitive scene a little bit when it comes to just the ride sharing part of it. Uber and Lyft, they're not just in the US, but where does Grab fit in that competitive scene for expanding into other countries, their global market share, I would say?
Well, right now they're throughout Southeast Asia, so they're really prevalent in like Singapore and Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, those areas. And so right now they're really entrenching in those areas and expanding into those areas where you're not going to find a lot of Ubers and Lyfts.
Overall, have those markets, Southeast Asian markets, done really well this year?
They have been doing very well. This is certainly a center of growth leadership for the economy, and I expect it to be that way in the coming year.
All right, a good way for investors to diversify. Before we get to that third name on your list, I wanted to talk about logistics. For investors out there, how do you get into investing in emerging markets? Can you find it on the same platform that you're already doing, or do you have to go somewhere else?
You can find emerging market information on MarketBeat. You just need to do some searches. There are some different screens that the website has that you can use to find stocks. Use those to build up a watch list, keep those on your radar, and as the news stories develop and the charts start looking good, you can use those as entry points.
Again, we talked to a macroeconomist about this and how important it is to diversify. So if you haven't watched that video yet, go ahead and we've got that linked here for you if you want to go back and watch that conversation. It was really interesting. But one of the things he said, Thomas, was how important it is. You're leaving money on the table if all of your investments are only in U.S. stocks.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Diversification is good. Emerging markets are a high growth sector of the market, and I think it's important to be exposed to it.
One concern I have about Grab is just looking at the chart. There's not a lot of forward momentum. There's a little bit, but there was so much excitement when the stock first came out. Any thoughts on how soon it might be before we actually see some movement in that chart?
This stock is one that shot up when it IPO'd. It crashed real hard because all the outlook was priced in. It's taken time for the company to build up its business. It's really been a slow rolling bottom and reversal, but it looks like the market is certainly gaining some momentum now. We've moved above some critical moving averages. We have swelling market support driving the price sentiment. It looks to me like this market is gearing up to shoot higher in the coming year. We're approaching some pretty critical resistance points. So when we set the next fresh high, to me will be a breakout and will set this market on path to complete a reversal and then continue trending higher next year.
Yeah, I think it's important to note here that there's a risk in any of these stocks, right? When you're
all stocks are risky. Emerging market stocks carry more risk because of the markets that they're tied to. So with any investment, just do your due diligence. Don't ever go all in from the first. You want to do small bites and build a position over time. If the stock moves higher and does what you think it will, then that's the time to start adding to it.
Very good advice for investors to think about. Well, let's get to that third company that you have.
The last one is Arco Dorados. If that sounds familiar, it's the Golden Arches in Spanish. This is the McDonald's Latin American franchisor. This company is growing at mid-single digits. It's got a really solid dividend. It provides a deep value and a high yield compared to the parent company. So you kind of get the benefits of owning the blue chip McDonald's, but with the emerging market exposure.
All right, very interesting. It's really McDonald's.
It is McDonald's. They're a franchisor. They're not the parent company, but they are expanding their network throughout Latin America. They're really big in all the large Latin American countries, Brazil, Argentina, growing throughout all those regions. And in the coming year, there are several catalysts ahead. We're looking at market share gains. We're looking at some margin recovery. Right now, Arco Dorado's stock price is a little depressed because they've been experiencing some margin pressures, but we're looking for margin recovery in the coming year. And along with that, we have the World Cup coming up, which is expected to drive a lot of activity and business on all levels throughout Latin America.
Yeah, is this company specifically only in Latin America?
Yes, Arcos Dorados is McDonald's Latin American franchisor. They are the largest franchisor outside the U.S. Pretty solid play, I would say.
All right, another thing that's interesting about this one, compared to the other two we talked about, it seemed like the first two stocks we talked about are maybe more high growth sectors. You've
Certainly.
got fintech, you've got ride sharing apps.
Right.
This seems more like a blue chip stock,
Totally.
right?
So emerging markets compared to regular markets would be that riskier play. Within these stocks, we have the startup growth style companies, which is dLocal and Grab, and then Arco Dorado certainly is the blue chip player in Latin America and emerging markets.
All right, this is so interesting. Let's talk a little bit more about emerging markets before we wrap up today.
Right.
We mentioned 3 different areas of the world to look at. Is there some other areas that are interesting for investors to consider?
Emerging markets, India is kind of interesting as a pure play because it's a very large country. It is expected to be a leader within emerging markets. Its middle class is growing at the fastest pace. Digitization is rapidly accelerating. They're getting lots of deals and interest from these hyperscalers for AI. So to me, India, on a country by country basis, could be the most interesting emerging market play for the next year.
I don't think we mentioned the Middle East either. I know Dubai has a lot of different investments and things like that in those kind of countries.
Right.
Anything in those markets?
Certainly, the Middle East is often included with Africa, but those Middle Eastern countries are certainly getting a lot of attention with AI. We've got Saudi Arabia is emerging as like an AI data center powerhouse. Dubai, they've got deals with the eVTOL companies, so eVTOL's moving over there. So yeah, the Middle East certainly is a good play for emerging markets.
All right, a very interesting conversation on different emerging markets to look at. Of the 3 that we talked about today, which of those areas of the world do you think are maybe the most interesting if viewers want to go out and explore other stocks in those emerging markets? What are some of the main emerging markets you would look into exploring?
I think Southeast Asia is the most interesting to me, including India. I think they have more companies, more opportunities, more visible, steady growth.
Very interesting. Again, I think it's great for viewers to look at diversifying a little bit. And I'm excited to diversify Bridget's buy watch list a little bit. I'm going to add Grab. I know we've talked about it several times. I think it has a lot of growth potential. And it's just a name that, again, we've talked about. So I know a little bit more about the company. Adding it to the watch list. If you haven't checked out the watch list, go to marketbeat.com/Bridget or scan the QR code we have for you here. It's a great way to check out all the stocks that we talk about on this channel every day of the week. We've got a lot of stocks on that watch list now.
We do.
Thomas, great to see you in person. Let me know what you think about this conversation on emerging markets in the comments. Are you looking to diversify and get into some emerging markets? Are there some other markets that we didn't talk about today that you are really interested in? Share that in the comments. We'd love to hear it. Thanks for watching, everyone. As always, happy investing.